Good morning. And what I want to talk about this morning is what happens when you try to play a game that you've bought from the Nintendo eShop, in other words, a digital game as opposed to a game on cartridge. What happens when you try to play one of those games on a secondary Switch when it hasn't got an internet connection? Now, first things first, before we get into that, we have to establish what is a primary and what is a secondary Switch. Your primary Switch, this one in my case, will be the Switch that you first went onto the Nintendo eShop with. So when you first got your Switch and you logged on with your account and you went into the eShop, it would have set up this Switch as your primary Switch. Any subsequent Switches you buy, even if you log on with your account, will be secondary Switches. They're not going to be your primary. You can change that though, and that's fairly easy to do. The way you would change it you would go into your primary Switch and you would go into the eShop. So let's do that now. Select your account, and it may ask you for a password at this stage. I've set it so it doesn't for me, just to make things a bit quicker. And then when it's loaded up the eShop, you go into the little icon at the top, which should correspond to the little image for your account. Click on that, and it'll bring up your account details. Now go all the way to the bottom, and you should see on here at the bottom, it says deregister. If you deregister this Switch and then go into this Switch and log on to the eShop, it will then register this as your primary Switch. Now, I would suggest whichever Switch you're going to be using out and about the most to set it as your primary. So it might be best for me to set this one as my primary, but for the time being, I'm going to leave it as this one being my primary. So let's just go home. So first thing I want to do is, if you look on the top here, you can see that this one is logged on to the internet, and this one is also logged on to the internet. One thing before I get into any games though, there's one other thing to be aware of. This has nothing to do with Nintendo Switch Online. That's a separate thing. Nintendo Switch Online gives you certain options like the ability to play Nintendo and Super Nintendo games, and it gives you the option to be able to play online games. What I'm talking about here specifically is any game that you've downloaded from the eShop. Now, obviously, if you haven't got an internet connection, you're not going to be able to play online games anyway, so that becomes moot. But if you're playing a game that is an offline game, will it still work when you haven't got an internet connection on a secondary Switch? So as I say, we've got an internet connection here and we've got an internet connection here. So if I go into the Capcom Beat 'em Up bundle and I load it up, and I'm only going to do it on this one first, because if I try and load it on this one as well, it'll say it'll suspend it. So, because you can't obviously have it running on two consoles with the same account at the same time. So let's just press A to start. And let's do offline mode. Let's just go through this. And it's loading up, and it's got the intro. So we know it works on the primary Switch when it's online. Let's just close that software so we don't get any problem on the secondary Switch. So we're online at the moment. So will it work when we're online? Bear in mind, this is the same account, and it seems to be working. Go into offline mode. This is the first time I've used it on this one. And it's working. So when you're online, either console will work. So if you're connected to a network, it will work fine. But what happens when you take them offline? So what I'm going to do, we've shown this is working. Let's go away from there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually turn off my router. And then I'm going to come back and I'll show you that neither of these are connected, and we'll try and connect with this one, and then we'll try and connect with this one. So just bear with me while I sort that out. Right, and we're back. And as you can see, there's no little icon in the top right hand corner to show that my switch is online. And this is my primary switch, as I say. And there's no icon here to show that my secondary switch is online either. So both of my switches are offline. Neither of them are connected to the internet, and they shouldn't be because I've turned the router off. So first things first, what happens when I go into my primary switch and I try and load the game up again? And it should load perfectly on this one because, as I say, this is my primary switch. And it all seems to be working perfectly fine. So let's just go out of that one and close the software. And now we'll go into it on my secondary switch, also with the icon turned off. So let's just go into there. And see if it loads up. I'm just going to turn the volume down on this. Don't want to get a copyright strike for volume. Now it says, unable to connect to network device. Please check the status of the network device and try again. And it says details. So let's go and look at details. Unable to connect to the network device. Please check the network device is operating correctly. Read the network device's manual, blah, blah, and so on and so forth. You may be able to improve signal, and it tells you that you basically need to sort out your network because you're offline. So basically the situation is that you cannot play any digital download, any game that you have bought off the Nintendo eShop. You won't be able to play them if you haven't got a connection, an internet connection to your secondary switch. They work fine on your primary switch, but don't bother taking your secondary switch out on the go if you've only got digital downloads on the switch, because they simply won't work. You're going to sit down on the bus and you're going to get this message. So the fact of the matter is that you can only have one console at a time that is able to play these digital downloads if you're taking it out and about, which kind of defeats the object when you're talking about using, well, what in effect is a portable. So a little bit irritating. It works very much the same way as the Xbox and the PlayStation. The only difference is the obvious one. The PlayStation and the Xbox are fixed consoles. So you can go and log on at any time and use your account. But with this, take this out and about, and it becomes a very expensive and rather nice looking brick. So anyway, I don't know if that one was any use to anyone. If it is, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to give it a like if it was useful to you. And as I say, we'll have a chat in the comments. A little bit irritating. It wasn't anything I didn't expect, but it would be nice if Nintendo set it up in such a way that you could actually use it offline when you're out and about. It just seems to make sense when you're talking about a handheld, which is what this is. But anyway, as I say, that's me done. And I'm going to go and drink my coffee. And I will speak to you guys in the next one. Bye.